Another opportunity for boaters to prevent petroleum products from entering the ocean is to use these fueling techniques when at the fuel dock. Use a rag to catch spills at the nozzle. Encourage the fuel dock to provide splash guards and absorbent donuts for pump nozzles. Use a no-spill container or rag to catch any overflow from the vent. And use a rag when removing the nozzle from the tank and returning it to the pump. There are 3 types of marine sanitation devices, also known as MSDs. Type 1 and Type 2 MSDs process material, reducing the amount of fecal coliform and particulate matter before being discharged overboard. These are usually found on larger boats and commercial vessels. The device most commonly found on recreational vessels are Type 3 MSDs, which are simply holding tanks.
We encourage all boaters to try and use pump-out facilities. Most boaters have holding tanks on their boats, and these holding tanks have to be discharged through a pump-out facility, typically in the marina community. We encourage boaters to get familiar with these devices, and if they're not, they can usually ask their marina operator or the dock master for instructions on how to do that. The other thing that we suggest is that they not use materials in their toilets or their holding tanks that might have some harmful effects either on their marine toilet or the pump-out facility itself.
The most common type of MSD system found on boats is the Type 3, and many Type 3 systems contain a Y valve. The function of the Y valve is to discharge the material either overboard or to the holding tank. One thing that boaters have to remember that is while operating within the 3-mile territorial limit or on any inland waters or reservoirs, and also within a no discharge zone, that the Y valve must be securely fastened so as to prevent accidental overboard discharge. The valves on the Y valves need to be either locked with a padlock or secured with some sort of non-releasable wire tie. Now this Y valve here has a provision for the handle to be locked. Others may not, so you may have to modify your own system.
Obviously, if boaters flush their toilets right into a harbor and then go swimming, there's going to be a little contact between human waste and people that you don't really want to see. At the same time, these kinds of contaminants can influence the food webs that are there. Oils and detergents can influence marine life, can cause them to become sick or die. The nutrients themselves from human waste and from some of these materials can cause algae to grow and cause little plankton blooms, which change the quality of the water.
To minimize the amount of material in the holding tank and the impact to the environment, boaters should use onshore facilities. Use local sewage pump-out stations, and use additives that don't contain formaldehyde.
Gray water is the water from sinks, washers, and showers that is discharged directly overboard from boats, typically without any kind of treatment. The problem with gray water is that it's usually pretty concentrated with phosphates, and the phosphates can encourage algae growth that's unwanted in your local waterways. To limit the amount of gray water that you discharge into the waterways, probably the easiest thing to do is to use limited amount of water in your sinks and while taking a shower. Also use low or non-phosphate soaps, and whenever you can, use onshore facilities like showers and laundry facilities. One thing to remember about gray water is that if you're in a no discharge zone, that it is illegal to discharge the gray water into the local environment.
There is growing concern about the amount of heavy metals associated with boat paints. These paints contain copper to reduce the amount of marine organism growth on a boat's hull. However, copper also impairs aquatic life. Alternative paint products, which don't harm marine organisms but do prevent this growth, are becoming more widely available.
I wanted a vessel that would be an example to the rest of the boating community on environmentally friendly techniques. That's why we built a sailing research vessel, so we wouldn't have to use fuel. And I also wanted to make sure that the bottom paint I used was environmentally friendly. I chose a bottom paint which uses a mechanism of a peroxidation. What it does is create a mild hydrogen peroxide solution on the bottom of the boat when it's immersed in water, such that the substrate, the boat's bottom, is inhospitable to fouling organisms and their larvae. And this leaves no heavy metal residue in the marine environment. These paints are out there, they're available, and I highly recommend that people investigate the use of non-heavy metal systems for anti-fouling.
Boaters need to be aware that some cleaning and boat maintenance products can cause health and environmental problems. Solvents, thinners, paints, varnish, and dust from sanding can be toxic and irritating to marine life. Here are some boat cleaning tips that not only help protect the environment, but may also save you time and money. Use more elbow grease and less product, but only as much as you need. Offer leftovers to a friend or neighbor. Be very careful with cleanup and use phosphate-free and biodegradable soaps. Here are some maintenance tips. Don't leave things out on the dock. Use drip pans and containment trays. Sand a little, wipe a little, or use a tarp if sanding a large area. Use a sander with a bag, and don't sand underwater or in windy conditions.
Recreational boaters use a number of products on their boat for either maintenance or operation that somehow can become hazardous wastes. People need to buy as least toxic a product as they can so that it minimizes the impact on the environment, yet does the job. And so people can make some very informed choices on the types of potentially hazardous materials that they bring on board their boat. And when they use them according to the way that the label explains them to be used. And so by doing that, they'll help protect the environment and get the maximum use out of the product.
Types of hazardous waste include oil, fuel, and other engine fluids, paints and varnishes, solvents and thinners, zinc anodes. Another source of hazardous waste include old batteries, expired flares, and stale gas. Boaters can reduce the pollution problem by taking these waste products to a household hazardous waste facility or marina collection center. Call 1-800-CLEANUP for locations near your home or marina. Trash has a significant impact on the health of the aquatic environment. While urban runoff is the most significant contributor of trash to our local waterways, boaters contribute to the problem when they are not careful.
Plastics that end up in the ocean come from a variety of sources. We find quite a few oil cans. People have put oil in while they're on the street and just drop the oil can onto the ground. It's run off into the storm drain and come down the river and gotten into the ocean that way. We find bottle caps are a very, very big polluter. Sauce packets from the fast food chains. Plastic floating on the surface of the ocean is not only an aesthetic problem. Plastic breaks down. It does what's called photodegrade. Ultraviolet rays make it brittle, it breaks down, it becomes the size of the zooplankton, the primary food for most ocean species. As part of the zooplankton, it's actually displacing natural food. And it's now to the point where we have many parts of the ocean where there's more plastic fragments in the plankton, which is the potential food for marine fish, than there is actual food.
Through entanglement and ingestion, thousands and thousands of marine animals are killed in the ocean each year. This includes dolphins, whales, seals, turtles, and any number of fish. Boaters can make a big difference by securing trash on board, bringing back what is taken out, and recycling what they can. If you are unsure about what to recycle or where you can recycle it, call 1-800-CLEANUP.